Hello, BookTube. Thanks for all the lovely comments and warm welcomes I've gotten in the last day or so. It's been really nice to be on the receiving end of it. So I thought I'd make a little bit of a special video for you today. So my tomorrow, probably your today while you're watching it, which is to say the 26th of July, 2026, is the highlight or probably the highlight of the Irish sporting calendar. It's the All-Ireland final in Gaelic football. So Gaelic football is a game that's played in Ireland and among Irish people in the diaspora across the world. It's a pretty unique national sport in that it's entirely amateur, even though there's a stadium that's, it looks like a massive international football stadium, and it is played to a very fine professional standard. None of the players are paid. It is entirely voluntary, and you very much follow the place that you are from. Very connected to where you are, right down. The Ireland is broken down into 32 counties, which are then divided into parishes and what have you. So each parish would have its local football team, which kind of feeds up into the county level, which then in Gaelic football they play for the kind of champion. You understand how a tournament works. But this year is all years are very special, but this one particularly, as the two teams that are in the final are Kerry and Mayo. Kerry is a footballing powerhouse. They've had 39 All-Ireland championships. Mayo haven't won an All-Ireland since 1951, which is quite a while ago, even though they've come close many times. So much so that a whole legend around a curse has come into it, that they were cursed by either a priest or a witch on the way home for overtaking that they were all on a bus. The team was on a bus after winning the All-Ireland. On the way back, they overtook a funeral, and a curse was put on them by either a witch or a priest, depending on which version of the story you tell. And legend has it that Ireland or Mayo will not win another All-Ireland final until every member of that team is dead. I won't go into it much more. I've insider knowledge on it about what happens. You can decide to believe in curses or not. That's up to you. Kind of why it's relevant for BookTube is both of these counties have, both Kerry and Mayo have very strong literary histories and presence. So that's true for most of Ireland, but in particular these counties. So probably the most famous literary figure from Kerry that you're like to have, maybe I should say where both of these counties are. So if you, maybe I put one up here, a map of Ireland. There's Mayo up at the northwest, and there's Kerry in the southwest. So they're both very rural counties. They're both on the Atlantic seaboard, and both very passionate about their football. Yes, so kind of why I bring them up. So Kerry, probably the most prominent literary figure in the last 100 or so years, was the publican, playwright, short story writer, raconteur, John B. Keane. If you've ever seen the film The Field, starring Richard Harris, John Hurt and Sean Bean, that's based on one of his plays. Very insightful into both the goings on of a small Irish town at the time and just a wider, deeper understanding of Irishness. Mayo also has deep literary roots. So in school, pretty much everyone in school learns the Irish language. Some go through their entire schooling in Irish. It's Gael schools. But anyway, either way, you're very likely to encounter a very famous poet, um, Antonio Raftery, who is famous for being kind of the last of the blind wandering bards. So at the end of the Gaelic order, as the British were taking over Ireland, there was like the end of the Gaelic system, and their kind of bards became wandering from place to place seeking patronage, and you learn some of his poems at school. More recently, Sally Rooney is from Mayo. Lover or loather, she is a very prominent literary figure internationally, and she is from Mayo as well. But I thought I'd give you something a little bit different, a little kind of taste of both counties. Recently, in the last, up until the last couple of years, two very, very famous poets from both of these counties passed away. From Kerry, there's Brendan Keneally, and very much associated with Mayo is Paul Durcan. Even though he's born in Dublin, his family is from Mayo, and he's very much associated with Mayo. So they're very, very different personalities. They're very similar in some ways, but very, very different. So I thought maybe I'd read out two of their poems so you can kind of get a sense of these poets if you haven't heard of them before, but also if to get a sense of them, to introduce you to them, and hopefully there's something that you'll like. I've had a look at my collection of books. I have one with a poem by Brendan Keneally, which is the Faber book of Irish verse. This is clearly quite an old copy. Someone's written down phone numbers and all this. That's fine. The edition was put together by John Montague, who was very, very generous to himself. There's quite a lot of John Montague in this poetry anthology. So that's the poem I have from Brendan Keneally is in there. The poem from Paul Durcan, from the Big Blue Book of Paul Durcan Poems, huge anthology of his poems. But there's one I'll read out for you. So if we look at Brendan Keneally, he was a Kerry poet who made Dublin his home. So he was originally born and raised in Kerry, to, again, publican. His father was a publican, I think. And he moved up to Dublin for his career, lived internationally, like all these people, different kind of a wandering bard. That tradition seems to have continued. I used to often see him around Dublin quite a bit in the Lemon Cafe. He'd be sitting there eating. It was a strange cafe. It used to just serve pancakes, like galettes with like different toppings and stuff, and coffee. That was kind of what they did. So you'd see him in there quite a bit, and it was very, very friendly, and there was a constant stream of people coming up to his table to say hello, spend some time with them, move on, or as he sat there kind of reading the paper or writing a poem, I guess, or just enjoying people watching, which is, that particular spot was an excellent place to do that. He also played Gaelic football for Kerry at a minor level, and played against Dublin in 1954, and I think through a foul caused them to lose the game. So like I said, football is very much a religion in both of these counties, particularly in Kerry, and I don't know if he could show his face there again for quite a while after that. I think he was known as a fellow who cost them an All-Ireland. Now that was obviously at a slightly lower level, but the passion was still there. As a poet, he can be quite humorous, quite light, quite friendly, very approachable. John Montague is a very dark person. His poetry is very dark. So of course the poem he picked to represent Brendan Keneally is again a very dark poem. So just a note on one or two of the words, just to give you a bit of context for it. He mentions furze, which is a word used in the southwest of Ireland for a plant known as gorse in the east of Ireland, and in England and Australia, New Zealand, places where this plant has been propagated. It's a very thorny bush. You see it a lot. A huge amount of it is used in hedgerows, and there's very, very bright yellow flowers. And another word just to be aware of is the word spancelled. So to spancel something is kind of to kind of tie down a cow. So I think it's kind of you pick it up in context, but just in case it isn't a word you're familiar with. So I suppose I should say just a little bit about the poem. So this is his poem dealing with the Irish famine. So the Great Famine of the mid 19th century is probably one of the most important events in Irish history. Certainly, to understand modern Ireland, you absolutely have to understand the famine, more so than any rebellions or revolutions or economic growth miracles that have happened since then. It was like an absolutely apocalyptic event. Huge portions of the population died, starved to death, died by disease, or emigrated. I suppose the reason there are so many Irish people throughout the world is due in large part to the famine and just the absolute destruction it caused. Like the population still hasn't gotten to the same level since then. People sometimes use that as a benchmark over here. It's like, oh, we need to get back to the pre-famine level population. There's enough people. We don't need to like aim for it. I mean, people were living in like abject poverty on the most inhospitable lands. We don't need to like move back to that. But this is his kind of poem dealing with that. And another thing that was impacted by the famine was that Gaelic order. The reason I'm speaking to you in English rather than Irish, or the reason English is my first language rather than Irish, is due in large part to the famine, which just wiped out the Irish language in huge parts of the country, caused a massive decline. It's really wiped out an older way of life that had been going on for going back centuries and centuries. So it is like the most important event in Irish history. So this is Brendan Keneally's poem, My Dark Fathers. My dark fathers lived the intolerable day, committed always to the night of wrong. Stiffened at the hearthstone, the woman lay, perished feet nailed to her man's breastbone. Grim houses beckoned in the swelling gloom of Munster fields where the Atlantic night fettered the child within the pit of doom, and everywhere a going down of light. And yet upon the sandy Kerry shore, the woman once had danced at ebbing tide, because she loved flute music, and still more, because a lady wondered at the pride of one so humble that was long before, the green plant withered by an evil chance. When winds of hunger howled at every door, she heard the music dwindle and forgot the dance. Such mercy as the wolf received was hers, whose dance became a rhythm in the grave, achieved beneath the thorny savage firs that yellowed fiercely in a mountain cave. Immune to pity, she, whose crime was love, crouched, shivered, searched the threatening sky, discovered ready signs, compelled to move, her to her innocent appalling cry. Skeletoned in darkness, my dark fathers lay, unknown, and could not understand the giant grief that trampled night and day, the awful absence moping through the land. Upon the headland, the encroaching sea left sand that hardened after tides of spring. No dancing feet disturbed its symmetry, and those who love good music ceased to sing. Since every movement of the clock accumulates to form a final name, since I am come from Kerry, clay and rock, I celebrate the darkness and the shame that could compel a man to turn his face against the wall, withdrawn from light so strong, and undeceiving spancelled in a place of unapplauding hands and broken song. Um, so let you kind of digest that for a little bit. So obviously you can kind of see his link back to Kerry, clay and stone. It's quite common in Irish poetry to vision Ireland as a woman, which again we kind of saw quite clearly in that poem, and how that's kind of how that's that she's kind of woven into that is kind of very interesting. But also you can see like the ceasing to sing, the destruction of the dancing that had gone on before. Was once a happy woman is now appallingly sad. That's kind of what's kind of coming across there. Though I'd be keen to hear your own thoughts on it. This is Paul Durcan. If you think he looks very serious there, you're bang on the money. A very accurate photo of him. He also passed away a couple last year. It's kind of he died last year. Two Paul Durcan stories. One is that there is a competition in Ireland called the Feis. So the famous one is the Feis Ceol, which is kind of the music competition. There's also a one for reciting poetry. So kind of when you're in primary, elementary school age, there's these series of competitions where you have to learn off a piece of poetry by heart and recite it in front of a crowd, and you're judged on the quality of your recitation. And not only how well you remembered it, but how it was presented, the emphasis. You might, if I remember correctly, you also might be asked questions on the poem, or maybe not. I'm kind of forgetting now. But I did that quite a bit as a young fella, and the judge on one occasion said that he came all the way to Mayo and was surprised that no one had recited a Paul Durcan poem. Having become a lot more familiar with Paul Durcan's poetry, I wouldn't really expect children to recite it. His poems can be, or certainly the subject matter can be, quite complex. When you think of Paul Durcan poems, anger, melancholy, complexity, and sharpness are kind of things that really come through. He's a very, very black humour to a lot of his poetry, and a lot of it is focused on coming to terms, or dealing with very very contentious issues in Irish society. Nationalism, the Catholic Church, the economic development, treatment of refugees, all these things, the homelessness, very, very socially conscious critic or poet in the most positive way. Very astute in many of his observations. And my other kind of Paul Durcan story is earlier this year, I was walking through George's Arcade, which is an old Victorian building. It's kind of hollowed in the middle, and there's lots of stalls selling, bric-a-brac, tarot readings, interesting food, but also there's quite a good used bookshop there, and they had his what was left of his library for sale. I had a look at it and was hoping to get something, but by the time I got to it, anything that I would have been interested in reading, or anything that was would have survived a reading, was gone. So I kind of passed over it, rather than having something for the sake of having it. I'd only have it if I was going to read it. So those are my two Paul Durcan stories. He used to deliver I don't remember this, but kind of, he used to deliver a weekly radio address to the nation in the mid noughties on RTE1, which would be the state broadcaster kind of news channel. So it'd be the equivalent of BBC in the UK. I'm not sure what the equivalent would be in. There wouldn't really be an equivalent in the USA, but this is the main broadcaster. This is and RTE1 would have had like the news, current affairs, and also some light entertainment and music. But they also had, once a week, Paul Durcan would come in and give his address to the nation. Actually, I do have some vague memories of it, but I wouldn't have been like really attuned to it. He was, as I'd said before, he was not born in Dublin. He was not born in Mayo. He was born in Dublin. Born in quite a very, very nice part of Dublin, Ranelagh. His father was a circuit court judge, but both his parents originally came from Mayo. So I've got quite a lot of poems to choose from here. The one I've chosen, I felt I should find one to complement the one Brendan Keneally poem I have. So I thought there's one, The Mayo Accent, which also looks at a lot of the same themes, like rather than historically losing your past, it's like a person discarding part of their past for a different, for a kind of a new identity. It also has Ireland as a woman. It's just a very, very common motif in Irish poetry. It's also been used very, very subversively. I have a poem here called Cuairt na Manihe. It's an Irish language poem that basically has the women of it's from hundreds of years ago. But it kind of does a very good parody of that Aisling, so the kind of visioned woman style of poetry. So just that might be a good one to look at in another video. So for this one, just if there's anything to be aware of, I think most of it you'll be able to get from the context of it. Turbery would be the one word you mightn't be familiar with. It's to do with rights of turf cutting. So there's great big bogs blanketing the Midlands in Ireland and the West. And this has been cut for hundreds of years for fuel, both by small farmers and also commercially. It's winding down now because it's it was going on to such an extent that it was just destroying this ecosystem. But Turbery relates to the rights people have of cutting this turf. The turf is also known as peat. Another piece. Oh yes. So another thing just to be aware of. So an Irish person reading this poem would be aware of it. So Mayo is also quite famous for Gráinne Mhaol, who's a pirate queen. She'd be contemporary of Elizabeth I in England, and when Gráinne Mhaol's son had been captured by the forces of Elizabeth Tudor, she had went over to London herself to negotiate his release, and there's all sorts of stories related to that. The most famous one was that she needed to sneeze, and Elizabeth I handed her a handkerchief. She sneezed and she threw it in the fire, where she was told, "Oh no, what you do is you sneeze and you put it back in your sleeve." And Gráinne Mhaol was enormously disgusted by this, of putting your befouled piece of cloth back into your sleeve. She's also famous in a kind of a classic way of her father was a pirate king. in Mayo, and he wanted to take his son out to follow in his footsteps. His son didn't really want to do that, and Grania took his place. I mean, there's so many folk songs and stories of women dressing up as men and sailing off to become pirates. You kind of wonder was there any fellas on these boats at all? But that's the story. And I mean, she was a pirate queen. So she's kind of alluded to in this poem. Just something to be aware of. I don't think if you didn't know it, you wouldn't get it. But just an extra layer of depth that might be of interest to you. So this is called the Mayo accent. Have you ever turned in to the voice of a Mayo man? In his mouth the English language is sphagnum moss, under the bare braceleted feet of a pirate queen. Syllables are blooms of tentativeness in bog cotton. Words are bog oak sung in understatement. Phrases are bog water in which syllables float, or in which speakers themselves are found floating face upwards or downwards. Conversations are smudges of bogland under cloudy skies. Speech in Mayo is a turbary function, to be exercised as a turbary right, with turbary responsibilities and turbary irresponsibilities. Peat smoke of silence unfurls over turf fires of language. A man with a Mayo accent is a stag at bay, upon a bog rock with rabbits round its hooves. Why then, Daddy, did you shed the pricey antlers of your Mayo accent for the tree-felling voice of a harsh judiciary, whose secret headquarters were in the home counties or High Germany? Your son has gone back to Mayo to sleep with the island woman, who talks so much she does not talk at all, or if he does not sleep with her, she will kill him, the pirate queen. So, two very, very different poems, two very, very different poets dealing kind of at a higher level on the same topic, using a lot of the same methods. A lot of Paul Durcan's poems can be very, very funny, in a very bleak and dark way, but they can also be very hard hitting. A lot of them have that little kind of twist in the end, and it's very representative of his poetry to see a kind of a turbulent relationship with his father come through. But anyway, so hopefully I'll make a little more light-hearted video, and I hope you will all be supporting Mayo in the 2026 All-Ireland final. Okay, thank you, BookTube.